My hands gripped the wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter. Across the elegant dining room table, my sister Jennifer sat there with that familiar smug smile, the one I'd seen countless times growing up whenever she managed to take something from me. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, Emma," she said, swirling her wine with practiced elegance, "I simply made sure they knew the truth about you. That incident at Marshall and Reed, how you supposedly took credit for someone else's work? It would be irresponsible of me not to warn them, wouldn't it? My name is Emma Chen, and at 32, I was watching my sister attempt to destroy my career for the last time. What Jennifer didn't know, what no one in my family knew, was that 5 years ago, I had been secretly adopted by Catherine Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds International, the very company where I'd just been offered a position. The irony of the situation would have been amusing if it hadn't been so infuriating. Jennifer had just tried to sabotage my job offer at my own company, where I'd been working undercover in various departments for years, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. "You really couldn't stand it, could you?" I said, setting my glass down carefully. The thought of me succeeding at something. Jennifer's perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her glass. "Please, Emma. I did you a favor. Reynolds International is way out of your league. You should stick to smaller companies, ones more suited to your abilities." I thought back to that day 5 years ago when everything changed. I had been at my lowest point, having just lost my job at Marshall and Reed thanks to Jennifer's first attempt at sabotage. She had convinced everyone that I had stolen credit for a major project, when in reality she had been the one who took my work and presented it as her own. I was sitting in a small coffee shop, scanning job listings with trembling hands, when Catherine Reynolds walked in. I nearly spilled my coffee when I recognized her. Everyone in the business world knew who she was. The woman who had built Reynolds International from the ground up, turning it into a global powerhouse. She sat down at my table without asking, placed my resume in front of me. I had applied to Reynolds International dozens of times, and said something I'll never forget. "Tell me why your sister's signature is on your work." I stared at her, stunned. "How did you?" "I've been watching you, Emma. Your applications, your work history. Something didn't add up. So I did some digging. The project at Marshall and Reed. I had my team analyze the coding style. It was clearly your work, not hers. What I want to know is why you let her take credit for it." The dam broke. Years of pent-up frustration and pain came pouring out as I told her everything. Growing up in Jennifer's shadow, how she always managed to take credit for my achievements, how her parents always believed her over me, how she had systematically sabotaged every opportunity I ever had. Catherine listened quietly, her sharp blue eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, she pulled out another folder. "I have a proposal for you," she said, "one that will require patience, discretion, and a lot of hard work. But in the end, it will give you everything you deserve, and more importantly, everything you've earned." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Catherine would legally adopt me. She had never had children of her own and had been looking for a successor who understood hard work and integrity. But we would keep it quiet. I would work my way through different departments of Reynolds International under various supervisors, learning every aspect of the business. No one would know I was Catherine's daughter or the future CEO. Success tastes sweetest, Catherine had told me, when it's earned through merit, not handed to you through privilege. For 5 years, I worked harder than I ever had before. Starting in entry-level positions, moving through different departments, earning every promotion through dedication and skill. Catherine mentored me privately, teaching me everything she knew about running a global corporation. And now here was Jennifer, thinking she had once again managed to ruin my chances at success. "Well," Jennifer said, standing up from the table with a satisfied smile, "I should get going. Big day at work tomorrow. Reynolds International just promoted me to senior project manager. I guess they know talent when they see it." I watched her gather her things, remembering all the time she had torn me down, stolen my achievements, convinced our parents that I was the problematic one. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. "Oh, Jennifer," I called out as she reached the door. "Congratulations on the promotion. I'm sure you'll make quite an impression." She gave me one last condescending smile before walking out, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors. If only she knew what awaited her tomorrow. I pulled out my phone and dialed Catherine. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Her warm voice came through the speaker. Jennifer took the bait, I said. She thinks she's ruined my chances at Reynolds International, and she's coming in tomorrow expecting to start as senior project manager. Excellent, Catherine replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Then it's time for phase 2. Are you ready? I thought about all the years of manipulation, the stolen opportunities, the lies Jennifer had told about me. More than ready, I said firmly. Let's proceed as planned. Tomorrow, Jennifer would walk into Reynolds International thinking she was about to start her dream job. Instead, she would find herself face to face with the truth and her own worst nightmare. The morning came faster than I expected. I had barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, about finally standing up to someone who had spent years tearing me down. I dressed carefully in my favorite charcoal gray suit, the one Catherine had given me for my first executive board meeting. As I fastened the pearl necklace around my neck, another gift from her, I couldn't help but smile at how different my life was now compared to 5 years ago. Catherine had given me more than just a job or a future. She had given me confidence, mentorship, and most importantly, the unconditional support I'd never received from my own family. She believed in me when no one else did, saw potential where others, especially Jennifer, had only seen someone to take advantage of. I arrived at Reynolds International an hour early as I always did. The security guard nodded respectfully as I walked in. He was one of the few people who knew my true position in the company. I took the executive elevator to the top floor, where Catherine was waiting in her office. "Good morning, Emma," she said, looking up from her computer with a warm smile. "Are you ready for today?" I sat down across from her desk, smoothing my skirt. "I think so. Though I have to admit, I'm a bit nervous." Catherine reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "That's perfectly normal. But remember, you've earned this. Everything you've achieved here has been through your own merit, your own hard work. Jennifer may have spent years taking credit for your achievements, but she can't take credit for what you've built here." I nodded, drawing strength from her words. "Thank you, Catherine, for everything." She smiled, then glanced at her watch. "It's time. Jennifer should be arriving soon for her orientation, shall we?" We made our way to the main conference room, where the department heads were already gathered. They all knew what was about to happen. They had been part of my journey over the past 5 years, even if they hadn't known my true identity until recently. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Jennifer strutted into the conference room, wearing a designer suit and her signature confident smile. She faltered slightly when she saw the gathering of executives, but quickly recovered. "Good morning," she said brightly. "I'm Jennifer Chen, the new senior project manager." Catherine stood up, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Actually, Ms. Chen, there seems to be some confusion about your position here." Jennifer's smile flickered. I don't understand. I received the offer letter last week." "Yes," Catherine said, her voice cool and professional. "An offer that was contingent upon the verification of your credentials and previous work experience." Something rather interesting came up during that process. I could see Jennifer's confidence beginning to crack. She glanced around the room, her eyes skimming past me as if I were just another executive. Catherine picked up a folder from the table. "We found some discrepancies in your portfolio, particularly regarding the Marshall and Reed project you claimed as your own work." Jennifer's face paled slightly, but she maintained her composure. "There must be some mistake. That project was entirely my work." "Was it?" Catherine asked, raising an eyebrow. She turned to me. "Emma, would you care to weigh in on this?" Finally, Jennifer really looked at me, confusion evident on her face. "Emma, what are you doing here?" I thought. She trailed off, probably remembering her smug announcement about getting my offer rescinded. I stood up slowly, smoothing my suit jacket. "Hello, Jennifer. I believe we need to have a conversation about exactly whose work you've been taking credit for, not just at Marshall and Reed, but throughout our entire careers." "What is this?" Jennifer demanded, her voice rising slightly. "Some kind of joke." "Emma, you can't be serious." "Ms. Chen," Catherine interrupted sharply, "I suggest you take a seat. We have quite a lot to discuss about your history of professional misconduct." Jennifer sank into a chair, her usual confidence crumbling as Catherine began laying out the evidence: years of stolen work, falsified credentials, and manipulated references. Everything Jennifer had built her career on was being exposed as a carefully constructed lie. But perhaps, Catherine continued, the most interesting part is how you attempted to sabotage another employee's position here by spreading false information about their professional history. Jennifer's head snapped up. I was trying to protect the company's interests. Emma has a history of having her work stolen by you, Catherine finished firmly. Yes, we're well aware. In fact, we've been aware for quite some time. The color drained from Jennifer's face as she looked between Catherine and me, realization slowly dawning in her eyes. I don't understand, she whispered. I took a deep breath. This was my moment, the one I've been waiting for through years of manipulation and lies. Let me explain it clearly, I said, my voice steady and strong. 5 years ago, Catherine Reynolds adopted me. I've spent that time working my way through every department of this company, learning the business from the ground up. Every promotion, every achievement was earned through hard work and merit. Jennifer's mouth fell open. What? And now, I continued, I'm not just an employee of Reynolds International. I'm the executive vice president and heir apparent. The position you thought you were sabotaging? It was a test, one you failed spectacularly. The silence in the room was deafening. Jennifer sat there, stunned as the full impact of what I was saying hit her. This is impossible, she stammered. You're lying. You must be lying. Catherine stood up, her presence commanding everyone's attention. I assure you, Ms. Chen, every word is true. Emma has proven herself to be exactly the kind of leader this company needs, someone who values hard work, integrity, and ethical behavior. Unlike yourself, I watched as my sister's carefully constructed world began to crumble around her. Years of taking credit for others' work, of manipulating situations to her advantage, of tearing others down to build herself up. It was all catching up to her at once. You can't do this to me, Jennifer said, her voice shaking. Our parents will be very interested to learn the truth about their daughters, I cut in. All of it. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of legal terms and documentation. Jennifer was escorted out by security, her dreams of a position at Reynolds International completely shattered. As she left, she turned to look at me one last time, and for the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before: respect. As the conference room emptied, Catherine came to stand beside me at the window. We watched Jennifer walk out of the building, her shoulders slumped in defeat. How do you feel? Catherine asked softly. I thought about it for a moment, relieved, I finally said, but also sad in a way. All those years she spent trying to tear me down, she could have been building something real of her own. Catherine nodded, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. That's what makes you different from her, Emma. Even now, you can feel empathy for someone who hurt you. That's what makes you a true leader. I leaned into her embrace, grateful for this woman who had changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. Thank you, I whispered, for believing in me when no one else did. Always, she replied simply. The news of Jennifer's dismissal from Reynolds International spread through our family like wildfire. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with texts and calls from relatives, some expressing shock, others demanding explanations. My parents' names kept flashing on my screen, but I wasn't ready to talk to them. Not yet. That evening, I sat in Catherine's home office, a glass of wine untouched in front of me. The room had become my sanctuary over the years, filled with memories of late-night strategy sessions and weekend mentoring. Catherine watched me from behind her desk, concern etched on her face. You'll have to talk to them eventually, she said gently. I nodded, running my finger along the rim of my glass. I know, I don't know what to say. How do you tell your parents that one daughter has been systematically sabotaging the other for years, and that you had to be secretly adopted by a CEO to finally escape it? Catherine's laugh was warm. Well, when you put it that way. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. Emma, please. We need to understand what's happening. Jennifer came home crying. She says you set her up. Of course she did. Even now, Jennifer was trying to spin the situation to make herself the victim. Some things never changed. You know, Catherine said, leaning back in her chair, sometimes the hardest conversations are the most necessary ones. Your parents deserve to know the truth, all of it. I took a deep breath. You're right. But I want to do this right, no more secrets, no more games. It's time for everything to come out in the open. The next morning, I invited my parents to Catherine's home. It was time they saw the full extent of my life, the one I built away from their constant comparison and Jennifer's manipulation. They arrived exactly on time, looking uncomfortable and out of place in Catherine's elegant living room. My mother's eyes darted around, taking in the evidence of wealth and success that surrounded us. My father sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, his usual confidence noticeably dimmed. "Emma," my mother started, her voice trembling slightly. "What is all this?" "Jennifer said you humiliated her at Reynolds International, that you somehow tricked her." "Mrs. Chen," Catherine interrupted, entering the room with her characteristic grace. "I believe it's time you heard the full story about both your daughters." My parents stared at her in shock, clearly recognizing one of the most powerful women in the business world. Before they could speak, Catherine continued. 5 years ago, I legally adopted Emma. She has since become not only my daughter, but also the future CEO of Reynolds International. Everything that happened yesterday was the culmination of years of careful planning. Not to trick Jennifer, but to finally expose her pattern of deception. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face reddened. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "Emma, what is this woman saying?" I stood up, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "It's true, Dad. All of it. And there's more you need to know." Over the next hour, Catherine and I laid out everything: Jennifer's history of stealing my work, her manipulation of situations to discredit me, the true story behind every failure my parents had blamed me for. We had documentation for everything: the Marshall and Reed project, college assignments, even high school competitions where Jennifer had taken credit for my work. But why didn't you tell us?" my mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I tried," I said softly, "so many times. But Jennifer was always better at convincing you. She was the perfect daughter, remember? I was just the troublemaker, the one who couldn't quite measure up." My father sat in stunned silence, the color slowly draining from his face as he processed everything. The carefully organized evidence was indisputable. Years of believing Jennifer's lies, of dismissing my achievements, of contributing to the toxic dynamic between their daughters. It was all crashing down around them. Yesterday wasn't about humiliating Jennifer, I continued. It was about finally standing up for myself, about showing everyone, including you, who I really am. Catherine moved to stand beside me, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. The gesture wasn't lost on my parents. They could see the genuine bond between us, the mother-daughter relationship that had formed while they were too busy praising Jennifer to notice what they were losing. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," Catherine said, her voice firm but kind, "your daughter is an extraordinary woman. She has earned every success through hard work and integrity. Qualities that should have been recognized and celebrated long ago." My mother broke down completely then, years of guilt and realization overwhelming her. My father just sat there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Emma," he finally said, his voice rough with emotion, "I don't know how can we ever?" "You can start by listening," I said. "Really listening. Not just to me, but to Jennifer too. She needs help, professional help. What she's done, what she's been doing for years, it isn't normal. And enabling her behavior isn't helping anyone." The conversation continued well into the evening. There were more tears, more revelations, more painful truths exposed. But for the first time in my life, I felt like my parents were truly seeing me, not as Jennifer's sister, not as the family disappointment, but as my own person. As they were leaving, my mother hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "We failed you so badly." "You did," I agreed, returning her embrace. "But we can work on making it right. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight, but we can try." My father, still struggling to find words, simply squeezed my hand before they left. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. After they were gone, Catherine poured us both a glass of wine. "You did well," she said, pride evident in her voice. "I learned from the best," I replied, smiling at the woman who would become more of a mother to me than I ever thought possible. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. Jennifer, unable to face the fallout of her exposure, checked herself into a therapy program. My parents, true to their word, began attending family counseling sessions. The truth about what had happened at Reynolds International became public knowledge in our industry, leading to a thorough investigation of Jennifer's past professional claims. At work, I stepped fully into my role as Executive Vice President. No more hiding, no more working undercover. The employees who had known me in my various positions over the years were supportive, many expressing admiration for the way I'd earned my place in the company. One afternoon, about a month after everything had happened, I received an unexpected email from Jennifer. My hand trembled slightly as I opened it. Emma, I've been doing a lot of thinking in therapy about why I always felt the need to take credit for your work, to tear you down to build myself up. The therapist says I have deep-seated insecurity issues, that I saw your genuine talent as a threat to my own sense of worth. I know saying sorry isn't enough. What I did to you, what I've been doing for years, it's unforgivable. I understand that now. I also understand that you didn't expose me out of revenge, but because it was the right thing to do. I'm working on myself, trying to understand why I became the person I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm proud of what you've accomplished, on your own merit, without having to steal from anyone else. Maybe someday, if you're willing, we can try to build a real relationship. One based on truth and mutual respect. Asterisk Jennifer. I sat back in my chair, tears pricking at my eyes. After all these years, all the pain and betrayal, my sister was finally acknowledging the truth. It wasn't a magical fix. Too much had happened for that, but it was something. A tiny seed of hope for the future. I forwarded the email to Catherine, who responded almost immediately. Growth is possible if we're willing to face our truths. Your sister is taking the first step. The question is, when she's ready, will you be willing to take a step too? Looking out my office window at the city skyline, I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The pain of being overlooked and dismissed, the joy of finding a true mentor and mother in Catherine, the satisfaction of finally standing up for myself, and now the possibility of healing old wounds. I thought about Jennifer's email, about my parents' attempts to make amends, about the family we could potentially become, not perfect, but real. Honest. True. Opening a new email, I began to type. Dear Jennifer, thank you for your honesty. You're right, forgiveness won't come easily. But I believe in growth and change because I've lived it. Keep doing the work, keep facing those hard truths. When you're ready, when you've truly done the work to understand and change your patterns, we can talk about building something new. Not what we had before, but something better. Something real. Take care of yourself, Emma. As I hit send, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was what real success felt like, not just professional achievements or public recognition, but personal growth, self-respect, and the courage to face difficult truths. Catherine appeared in my doorway, a knowing smile on her face. Ready for the board meeting? I stood up, straightening my jacket. Ready, I said firmly. As we walked to the conference room together, I realized that my story wasn't just about exposing Jennifer or proving myself to my parents. It was about finding my own path, my own strength, and my own family, both the one I was born into and the one I had chosen. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in boardrooms or offices, but in our own hearts. And sometimes the sweetest victories come not from defeating others, but from finally becoming who we were always meant to be.